Right now, in high schools all across Georgia, you have students who are missing class. And it's not because they're rebellious or bored or, just lazy.
Right, yeah, not at all.
They're actually missing class because the sheer psychological toll of, like, simply walking through the cafeteria is triggering a real paralyzing neurological threat response.
It's an actual physical reaction, yeah.
Exactly. And I think we have this cultural assumption, the teen drama, the gossip, the changing friend groups, the slam doors, that it's all just a normal, trivial phase.
Oh, for sure. The collective adult response has historically just been a massive eye roll.
Right. We treat it as an annoyance, like a rite of passage. And we just tell kids, well, you'll eventually grow out of it.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, by the way. Today, we are looking at some really fascinating sources.
Yeah, we have a breakdown of youth mental health realities and a brief on a comprehensive K-12 program called MentalSpace Georgia. And when you look at these materials, you really see the danger of that dismissal.
Oh, absolutely.
Because what MentalSpace is doing is shifting the framework entirely. I mean, they're moving away from dismissing these youth struggles and treating the challenges systemically, seriously, and honestly, with real clinical rigor.
So before we can even look at the solution being rolled out in these schools, I think we have to unpack the specific problem they're actually trying to solve, right?
Yeah, you have to define the problem first.
And unmasking this whole teen drama myth requires looking at what is literally happening inside an adolescent's brain.
Right.
The phrase teens just want to fit in. It severely understates the biological reality of what's going on. Identity formation and peer pressure stress are, well, they are deeply, deeply distressing.
They are. Because the adolescent brain is uniquely sensitized to social reward and social threat.
Yeah, it's hyper-aware.
Exactly. So to a teenager, the threat of social rejection can literally feel like a threat to their physical survival.
Wow, physical survival.
Yeah. So when you see a teenager constantly, changing their behavior or their vocabulary or their clothes to match whatever group they happen to be standing next to.
It's like an actor playing a chameleon, right?
Yeah.
Like constantly swapping costumes to please whatever audience is in front of them.
That's a perfect analogy.
Until they develop this intense fear of being found out, and they completely forget who they are when the play ends.
Yes, you are not just seeing a kid trying out new outfits. You are witnessing a desperately deployed defense mechanism. I mean, they are actively trying to neutralize a perceived threat.
And the sources actually outline specific warning signs for when this crosses from, typical adolescent development into actual clinical distress.
Right, because there is a line.
We're looking at things like an intense, gripping fear of rejection or this pervasive dread of being exposed as an imposter within their own friend group.
Yeah, or you might see severe withdrawal, sudden unexplained irritability.
Just snapping at people for no reason.
Exactly. Or steep drops in confidence. It takes a staggering amount of cognitive energy for a teenager to maintain that level of hypervigilance all day.
I can't even imagine. And when adults write this off as everyday drama, they miss the profound internal distress taking place right underneath the surface.
They completely miss it. The student gets so preoccupied with monitoring their environment for social threats that they have no cognitive bandwidth left for actual learning.
Which makes sense. But it's also crucial to note from our materials that while recognizing these signs is vital for parents and educators, a licensed clinician has to be the one to make any actual diagnosis.
Oh, absolutely. What looks like everyday drama to, say, a passing teacher in the hallway is often clinical distress requiring professional intervention.
So telling a teenager in that state of hypervigilance to just be yourself is honestly terrible advice.
It's the worst advice.
Right, because if being yourself feels like a mortal threat in the high school hallway, they need something way stronger than just a platitude.
They need tangible, evidence-based tools.
Exactly. And our sources highlight two specific clinical interventions being deployed by MentalSpace, cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, and dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT.
Yeah, and these are highly structured frameworks. They're designed to give individuals agency over their own minds.
So how does CBT work in this context?
Well, CBT focuses on identifying and reframing distorted thought patterns. So if a student's automatic thought is, if I speak up in math class, everyone will laugh and I'll be ostracized.
Right, going straight to the worst-case scenario.
Exactly. CBT provides the mechanics to challenge and dismantle that catastrophic thinking.
Okay, and then what about DBT?
So DBT is specifically engineered for intense emotional regulation and distress tolerance. It teaches a teenager how to, ride the wave of a panic attack.
without just completely losing it.
Right, without resorting to destructive behaviors or completely losing their core identity to the peer pressure around them.
Okay, wait, hold on. I need to push back on the logistics of this a little bit. Because CBT and DBT are historically reserved for very quiet, controlled clinical therapy settings, right?
Traditionally, yes.
You sit on a couch in a calm room with a psychiatrist, and you work through these frameworks. So how does applying these complex, high-level skills translate to a teenager who is literally just trying to survive the sheer chaos of a cafeteria or a crowded locker room?
Well, that friction point is exactly what makes the mental space model so innovative.
How so?
They are taking evidence-based supports originally designed for complex clinical emotional regulation, and they're adapting them for the real-time, high-pressure environment of daily school life.
So out of the clinic and into the school.
Exactly. It's about taking the tools out of the isolated therapy room and putting them directly into the adolescent's pocket.
Oh, wow.
So when a student is being bullied at their locker or feels overwhelming panic setting in during lunch, they have immediate practical steps.
Like the specific DBT grounding techniques.
Yes, to deploy in that exact high-stress moment.
That makes a lot of sense. And let's consider what this means for the broader school environment, too. Because a high school is essentially a closed ecosystem.
Very much so.
You cannot have hundreds of students experiencing profound identity distress without that stress bleeding into the classroom. It affects the entire building.
Yeah, it really does.
And our sources make it super clear that teachers and school staff feel this pressure rippling through their classrooms every single day.
Managing these daily crises takes an immense psychological toll on educators. I mean, for a long time, educational support focused exclusively on the child.
Right, it was all about the student.
But treating a student in isolation is structurally flawed if the adults around them are completely overwhelmed by secondary trauma and stress.
It's like the classic airplane safety analogy, right?
Oh, the oxygen mask.
Yeah. The flight attendant always tells you to put your own oxygen mask on before assisting others. You can't help a panicking kid if you are literally gasping for air yourself.
That is exactly it.
Think of a classroom like a complex circuit board. If the main power supply, the teacher, is surging with unmanaged stress and burning out, it's going to short out all the delicate components connected to it.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
A teacher running on empty just cannot be the stable grounding force a teenager needs when that student is tentatively trying to practice new CBT boundaries.
Because if a kid tries to establish a healthy boundary and the adult crushes it because they're just too stressed to engage properly, the tool fails.
Right, it completely falls apart.
Which is why MentalSpace addresses this through a surprisingly holistic approach. The infrastructure they're deploying across Georgia doesn't just treat the teenagers.
Right, they include the adults too.
Yes, it includes dedicated staff wellness programs and family counseling. The core philosophy highlighted in the text is super straightforward. Supporting the adult supports the students.
Supporting the adults supports the students. I love that.
It's a systemic approach. It ensures that when a student is working on emotional regulation, the adults in their life, both at school and at home, have the psychological bandwidth and the training to actually recognize, respect, and reinforce those efforts.
Okay, but implementing a philosophy like that across an entire state sounds incredibly complex.
It's a massive undertaking.
Standardizing clinical care, staff wellness, family counseling. I mean, that involves navigating legal requirements, funding, physical school layouts. Let's break down the operational logistics of how MentalSpace School actually deploys these K-12 services across Georgia.
Well, the framework is built heavily around same-day teletherapy.
Teletherapy, got it.
Yeah. By utilizing telehealth, they solve the immediate bottleneck of availability. A student in crisis doesn't have to wait 3 weeks for an appointment.
Which is huge when a kid is in distress.
Exactly. And they pair this immediate access with comprehensive crisis intervention and specific structured protocols for suicide and violence prevention.
So I want to walk through how a student actually uses this in a busy school day. Because from the infrastructure outlined in the text, this isn't a student just scrolling through a therapy app in the middle of math class, right?
No, definitely not.
They step into a designated private wellness space within the school, they pull up a secure device, and they connect with a therapist.
Right, it's a dedicated space.
And the text specifically notes, this staff is made up of licensed, diverse, and culturally competent therapists.
It's just so important.
It is. When we're talking about adolescent identity formation, a teenager needs to feel fundamentally seen and understood by someone who grasps their specific cultural and social context.
Yeah, cultural competence in therapy is a primary driver of engagement. It significantly increases the effectiveness of the treatment,
Especially for teenagers.
especially for adolescents who are already, struggling to figure out where they fit in the world. If a student feels they have to translate their culture or their lived experience before they can even begin to discuss their anxiety, the barrier to care is often just too high.
Yeah, they'll just give up. And speaking of barriers, funding is usually the tallest barrier to mental health care.
Almost always.
But the insurance details provided in our sources are staggering. I mean, Medicaid is accepted at an absolute $0 copay.
The $0 Medicaid option is incredible.
Alongside that, they've built a comprehensive safety net that covers almost everyone else by partnering with major providers like Blue Cross Blue Shield, Cigna, Aetna, United Healthcare, Humana. If the list goes on.
Securing that $0 Medicaid option really is a masterclass in addressing socioeconomic disparities.
It just removes the friction entirely.
It removes the financial friction that historically prevents vulnerable students from accessing high-quality psychological care.
Right.
And by layering that with broad private insurance acceptance, they are ensuring the program is financially sustainable while remaining accessible to the entire student body.
There are also strict legal compliance factors driving this rollout, which we should touch on.
Oh, definitely. The legal side is a big driver here.
The program is fully compliant with HIPAA, which protects the privacy of the student's medical information, and FERPA, which protects their educational records.
Yep.
And the sources specifically highlight MentalSpace's support for HB 268 compliance.
Right. The new legislation.
Just for anyone unfamiliar, we are just reporting on what the source material states here. HB 268 is a legislative mandate in Georgia requiring schools to implement robust mental health supports, and it has a looming deadline of July 2026.
So schools are legally on the clock.
They are on the clock.
And legislative mandates often force school districts to act quickly, which, historically leads to corner cutting.
Oh, for sure.
When administrators are panicking about a compliance deadline, the temptation is to just purchase a cheap software solution, check the compliance box, and move on.
Without providing any meaningful human care to the students.
Exactly.
So I'm looking at this statewide teletherapy model, and I'm wondering if they're falling into that exact trap.
How do you mean?
Well, if I'm a kid in crisis, talking to a face on a screen might feel significantly colder and more detached than walking down the hall to sit in a familiar guidance counselor's office. Are schools just using screens to fast-track their HB 268 compliance before that 2026 deadline?
I mean, it's a totally valid skepticism, but a closer look at the framework reveals a really highly strategic pattern.
Okay, what's the pattern?
They are using teletherapy to solve the access problem, but they are combining that technology with dedicated therapist teams for each individual school.
Oh, so it's not just a random call center.
Exactly. It is not an outsourced call center. The student is seeing the same therapist on that screen every time.
Okay, that changes things.
Right. That therapist knows their specific school, they know the principal, and they understand the local context of that community.
So they're leveraging technology for immediate access, but maintaining human consistency to build actual relationships.
Yes.
And if you're a school administrator staring down that July 2026 deadline, being able to plug into a turnkey system like that is invaluable.
It solves so many headaches.
MentalSpace handles the IPEL and FERPA integration, the complex insurance billing, the diverse staffing. The sources list their contact points clearly as mentalspaceschool.com and their email, mentalspaceschool@cheattherapy.com, which indicates they're actively onboarding districts right now.
And solving that logistical nightmare for the school administration is just crucial.
Because it frees them up to actually run the school.
Exactly. It frees up the educators to focus on education rather than constantly triaging mental health crises in the hallways.
Now, an ambitious rollout with tight legislative deadlines and a network of therapists is really only as good as its concrete results.
The data has to back it up.
And the outcomes provided in our sources are pretty impressive. There are three key statistics we should look at: an 89% rate of improved attendance, a 92% reduction in anxiety, and an 85% rate of family satisfaction.
And that family satisfaction rate aligns perfectly with their whole ecosystem approach, right?
Yeah, because they're involved.
When you include family counseling and you give parents the actual tools to support their children, satisfaction naturally rises.
And the 92% reduction in anxiety is precisely what structured CBT and DBT are designed to achieve.
Yes, that makes perfect clinical sense.
I am completely struck by the attendance statistic, though.
The 89%.
Yeah. How does providing therapy directly get kids back in their classroom seats?
Huh.
I mean, an 89% improvement in attendance almost suggests these therapists are somehow acting as highly effective truant officers.
Right. It seems weird at first glance, but it connects the dots right back to our initial understanding of adolescent distress. Remember the neurological reality of that chameleon behavior we talked about?
Right, the teenage brain interpreting social rejection in the cafeteria as an actual physical survival threat.
Exactly. If the school environment feels like a survival threat, what is the natural biological human response?
To avoid it.
Avoidance. The teenager will simply avoid the location of the threat. They will claim they're sick, they'll skip class, and they will become chronically truant.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. By equipping the student with CBT and DBT skills, you are removing the internal distress. You are giving them the psychological armor to actually handle the cafeteria.
So the threat is neutralized.
Yes. When the environment is no longer a source of paralyzing fear, the avoidance behaviors naturally eliminate themselves.
Wow.
They go back to school because they are no longer terrified of the social threats waiting for them. Therapy puts them back in their seats by making the seat feel safe again.
That reframes truancy entirely.
It really does.
A kid skipping school isn't always a discipline problem to be punished. Often it's a completely logical retreat from an unmanageable emotional environment.
Exactly. And by addressing the root mental health struggle, the behavioral symptom just resolves itself.
This is why treating the system rather than punishing the symptom is so vastly superior.
It changes everything.
So, to kind of recap the journey of this deep dive today, we started by dismantling the trivialization of teen drama, recognizing the severe neurological distress of adolescent peer pressure.
Yeah.
We explored how evidence-based tools like CBT and DBT are being taken out of the clinic and deployed directly in Georgia schools, giving kids the skills to maintain their identity in real time.
And we saw how MentalSpace ensures the adults, the teachers, and the parents are supported too, so they don't short-circuit the whole system.
Exactly. And finally, we looked at how this legally compliant teletherapy infrastructure balances technology with dedicated human care, resulting in a staggering 89% improvement in attendance and a 92% drop in anxiety.
It's a remarkable blueprint.
And for administrators or parents wanting to see the mechanics of this, their hub is mentalspaceschool.com.
It really is a blueprint for structurally caring for the next generation. But, looking at these outcomes leaves us with a fascinating, much broader implication to consider.
Oh, what stands out to you?
Well, if evidence-based tools like CBT and DBT are proving this phenomenally effective, yielding a 92% drop in anxiety for teenagers navigating the intense, shifting politics of the high school yard, what would happen if we proactively taught these exact same boundary-setting and identity-preserving skills to adults navigating the complex, often toxic politics of the modern workplace?
Oh, wow. Imagine if we all knew how to stop treating everyday social friction like a survival threat.
Exactly.
That is a deeply compelling thought to leave you with. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.